Breaking news. Promised this before the segment here. Lisa Murkowski, the senator from Alaska, has come out against Pete Hegseth's nomination. She says she has met him, and she right here, I cannot in good conscience support his nomination for Secretary of Defense. I do not make this decision lightly. Rhino alert, folks. We got a big old rhino alert coming up here in Alaska. She says, I commend his service, leading troops and veterans. She says she has significant concerns, talks about his expertise, talks about his qualifications, talks about statements on women in combat, talks about some of these media allegations that have been made regarding him. And let's see. I regret that I'm unable to support Mr. Hegseth. We have Mark Lucas on now, the executive vice president of the Article 3 project, someone who also served with Pete and knows him quite well. Mark, how are you?
Great. Thanks for having me on.
So, Mark, let me get your reaction to this. Lisa Murkowski, the first senator to come out unequivocally and put on the record that she is not for Pete.
Yeah, so I've known Pete for over a decade, so I can talk about his qualifications, his character. He was my predecessor at Concerned Veterans for America, and he handed me a world-class organization. I maintained his leadership team and his strategy, and Pete Hegseth really built this vision of reforming the Department of Veterans Affairs. So I saw his leadership firsthand. He helped prepare me when I was meeting with President Trump at the White House to talk about how we could reform the VA. We also served in the 34th Infantry Division. Pete and I are warfighters. We were both infantry rifle platoon leaders in combat. If you want to talk about his qualifications, he deployed to Afghanistan. He deployed to Iraq, Guantanamo Bay. He's got 2 Bronze Stars. He called in airstrikes. I like to say that the trigger pullers love Pete Hegseth and the paper pushers hate him.
So with this development of Senator Murkowski coming out, look, at the end of the day, this comes down to math, right? So it is the Republicans have a 53 vote majority in the Senate. That's assuming that no Democrats come over and vote for the nominee. Obviously, you saw with Marco Rubio 99-0. So he did receive that confirmation once it was seen that he was going through. He was the first cabinet nominee to be confirmed. Then, but let's just talk party line because we're looking at math here. So from 53, losing Murkowski, that takes it down to 52. I know 2 others that particularly seem to be on the bubble as pertains to just the media reporting here in D.C. are Susan Collins and Mitch McConnell. So how do you think the math plays out, and what is the tail of the tape here?
The math is still good for Pete Hegseth. I believe that Pete Hegseth will be confirmed as our next Secretary of Defense either late Friday evening or early Saturday morning. Senate Democrats are playing games, which is very unfortunate because our national security is on the line. And to go back into time, when President Joe Biden was elected president, 2 days after his inauguration, Lloyd Austin was confirmed as his Secretary of Defense. And what we see is that Senate Democrats in particular, they don't believe that President Trump has a mandate. I guess they don't believe in the will of the American people, because we all saw that President Trump won in a historic landslide. He won every single swing state. The American people support this disruptor. President Trump is our commander-in-chief, but they also support his disruptor-like cabinet with Pete Hegseth. And what I've seen at the Article 3 project, we developed a action center, and Pete Hegseth, his nomination is extremely popular. We've had over 30,000 people send in tens of thousands of messages to the United States senators in support of Pete Hegseth. He is the right pick. I feel good about the math, and Pete Hegseth will be our next Secretary of Defense.
Okay, so I'm just walking through some of these scenarios here. So you're looking at potentially, and by the way, the 53-47, this was the vote that was taken on those party lines when it came to one of the procedural votes, I believe, yesterday. So that's one of the things that we're, sort of taken as reading the tea leaves as potential for the floor vote. But of course, moving the nomination along is not the same thing as voting to confirm. So I know a lot of people or some folks out there, maybe not in this audience, but some folks out there were saying that they thought maybe Pete Pete had been confirmed yesterday. It's not actually the case. So you're saying possibly late tomorrow, early Saturday. That, of course, means that it goes down. So you've got Collins, you've got McConnell himself, and then it's down to 50. And then, of course, in a 50-50 situation, it would be J.D. Vance who breaks the tie-breaking vote. Is that correct?
That's correct. And let's not forget, during that procedural vote, Senator Fetterman from your home state of Pennsylvania voted to advance Pete's nomination. So we have the ability of losing 3 Republicans. We could pick up John Fetterman. JD could come in for the tie-breaking vote. But as we sit today, I believe that the math still looks good, that Pete Hegseth is on track to be our next Secretary of Defense. And these smear campaigns as well are just acts of desperation. I've been telling people that Pete Hegseth's confirmation is Kavanaugh 2.0. We saw NBC News run a story yesterday with these fake allegations from Pete's former sister-in-law, which, by the way, Pete's ex-wife has forcefully refuted those. That's an act of desperation. Democrats know that the math is not on their side. They know that Pete is very popular with the grassroots, so they're trying everything they can to disrupt this nomination. But I believe that the math is good and he will go through.
Well, that's good news to hear. And of course, this is, I know obviously a lot of people or some of the other nominees are probably going to be looking at these votes as well. Tulsi Gabbard has now just been confirmed for a hearing. She has the date next Thursday, so that will be the 30th. We also know that Kash Patel is going up on the 29th. I believe RFK is also going to be scheduled pretty soon here. So a lot of the nominees, and these are the big ones. These are really, I think, the big 3 are Hegseth, RFK, and Tulsi Gabbard. The people are really looking to, as pertains to, look, this is the agenda that the American people voted for. These are the people that President Trump put up. Obviously, Hegseth not during the campaign, but afterwards. And look, at the end of the day, Pete Hegseth stands for the kind of things that President Trump spoke about forcefully on the campaign trail. This idea of having an actual change agent at the Secretary of Defense, not having someone who's either part of the system or someone who wants to simply continue business as business. Isn't that right?
You're correct. And we always knew that Pete Hegseth was going to be the most challenging nomination. It was so outside of the box, and we anticipated the Kavanaugh tactics from the left. So this was supposed to be a challenge. And so there's no surprises today. He's on track. And you're absolutely right that President Trump, he loves Pete Hegseth. Pete is a warfighter first. That's why veterans and even active duty service members all across the country have had such a positive response. Recruiting is starting to pick back up, and Pete Hegseth will return our military back to the fundamentals. As I said before, Pete and I were both warfighters. And in theater, we did not have time to focus on frivolous matters. We had to focus on shoot, move, communicate, and stop bleeding. And guess what didn't make the list? DEI, transgender surgeries, or understanding white rage. So Pete Hegseth, we need him desperately. The world has never been more volatile than ever. And Jack, you brought up a couple other confirmations as well. And Tulsi Gabbard is kind of the same cloth. Just like Pete and I, she was a member of the National Guard. She brings an outsider lens into these intelligence agencies. She deployed as a combat leader. She's going to come in and disrupt an intelligence community that you know very well that needs major reform. So we look forward to supporting all of Trump's cabinet selections.
Well, I've heard this also from a number of other senators. We had Senator Lee, we had Senator Johnson, and a number of them have been saying simply that it looks as though they don't expect President Trump's nominees to not be confirmed. Sure, there might be a couple of votes here or there. They go this way, they go that way. But at the end of the day, the president won in a truly dominant and commanding fashion back in November. And doing so, and as the president mentioned last night, he said, I did it the hard way, the euphemism to say the least, understatement possibly of the millennium, that the president gets his cabinet, the president gets his picks, and their success and failure at the end of the day should be up to them rather than having the senators try to push too hard on the president's picks. And we know, of course, that nothing against Pete or Tulsi or any of the nominees, but we know that President Trump certainly is more than willing to change out his cabinet should any issues arise. Isn't that right?
You're absolutely correct. And I would say this about the Senate. There's traditions, there's norms, and I respect those. Every committee has different rules of how they refer these committees to the floor. For instance, the Judiciary Committee, they have a couple days of hearings, which makes sense because some of those nominees are going to be judges in lifetime appointments. And the Senate Armed Services Committee, they had one round of questioning for Pete Hegseth. The Senate Republicans were able to expedite that. They got him to the floor. And I respect tradition, but the American people, they understand that we are in a very pivotal time in modern day history, and we need to get these
Mark
people
Lucas,
confirmed as
we're
soon as
just
possible.
about out of time here. Human Events Daily. Go give him a follow. The Article 3 Project, where Mark Lucas works over with the great Mike Davis and also Will Chamberlain. We'll be right back.